Oh, what a beauty! Now, this is a recently discovered species called the Oracle Arms 2311. Not much is known about the 2311, other than it comes from the genus 1911. Now, I think the best way to understand this new species is to disassemble it. Let's carry on. Oh, she's angry! She's angry! Hey guys, welcome back to the Untrained Unprofessional Workbench. I'm Nobody, and thanks for being here. So we're going to go ahead and do a two-part video on the Oracle Arms 2311 for the disassembly and the assembly. So I wanted to go over some of the tools that you're going to be needing, and these are just some of the things that I found were helpful. Now you're going to need a T25, a T15, and a T10. Some type of non-marring punch or a brass punch. Some regular standard punches. I ended up using primarily a 3/32. Little needle nose, that was a little helpful. A paper clip. A 1/16 and an 050. A hammer. A 1911 tool is useful, or you could use a small screwdriver or punch. This was handy for acting as a third hand. Some tape or a roll of tape, and of course, beverage of your choice. To disassemble the 2311, you're going to have to start with the basic field strip. And what you're going to do is you're going to take this little half circle here, and you're going to line it up with a part that is on the slide stop that is on the inside. You'll be able to see it on your bench, but it's kind of hard to see here on video. But what you want to do is you're going to line it up, and then you're going to take your finger, reach in, and you're going to push on the back of the slide stop, and it'll just pop right on out. So go ahead and separate the frame and the slide. And just to give you a better idea, that's that little half part that you're trying to line up with the slide. Let's go ahead and set the frame aside, and we're going to focus on the slide from here on for a bit. We're going to remove our guide rod and recoil spring, and you're going to do so by pushing forward on the guide rod and lifting up and out. Now this whole thing is going to want to pop out. It is not captured. It is on its own. So if you're not holding on to this guide rod and it slips out of your hand, you can launch this across the room. Remove the barrel simply by lifting forward, up, and out. You're going to feel how it wants to come out of the slide. That is your basic field strip, and for the most part, this is where you're going to stop. You're going to do all your cleaning and everything, and then put it back together. But we want to go a little farther, so we're going to finish taking apart the rest of the slide, and we're going to start with our firing pin and firing pin stop. I'm going to grab a punch. This is a 3/32, but you can use an 1/8. 3/32 just seems a little easy. Now I compress the firing pin just enough to where I can start lifting up with the punch. I want to stop right here because I want to cover the back of the slide before I go any farther, because that firing pin is going to want to come out. So as you lift that firing pin stop out of its channel, that firing pin is going to want to come out with some force. Again, this is another thing that will want to launch across the room. Next thing that we want to take apart. Well, you want to remove the extractor, but in order to get to the extractor so you can remove it, you got to remove this rear sight plate. And that is going to be a T15. Now, when these come from the factory, these are Loctited in with like a blue Loctite. And so it is going to take a little bit of force to come on out. But since I've taken this apart once before, it wasn't too bad. The other thing that you're going to experience on this is that Loctite is going to seep in between the plate and the slide. And so while you're trying to remove that, you got to initially break that bond loose. And that's when your non-marring or your brass punch comes into play. Now you can take your roll of tape, or if you have a bench block, you can do that. To remove this plate, you're going to take either your brass punch or your non-marring punch, and right where that firing pin stop would go, you're going to tap the back side of that plate until it comes loose. Now, initially, it might have an issue because it is also keyed, and I will show you where that is. You have a key slot located right here, and then a little tab right there. So that might be a little interesting for your initial removal. But just keep going, you'll get it out. Also, once you kind of break it loose, it may benefit you to try to wiggle it from there. Next step is that we're going to remove the extractor, and that is done by this little Allen right here, which is a 1/16. And you can see that it actually comes through all the way to the inside of the slide. This is not Loctited in, so you can just unscrew it. And I put a little bit of pressure on the back of the extractor here to compress that spring just to make it a little bit easy. And it'll come right on out. Now, because of the extractor design, what you're going to need to do is pull it forward towards the ejection port and then out. Then remove your spring. So that is your fully disassembled slide minus your front sight, but we're not going to get into that. Okay, so we're now going to transition over to our frame, and just like any 1911 or 2011, I'm going to start with the thumb safety, and that removes just like you would on any other 1911, 2011 platform. Takes some wiggling and cussing, and as this is your first time doing it, it is going to be 10 times harder than normal. But once I start to get a little gap in between the frame and the thumb safety, I like to take, and really this is up to you and you got to be careful when you do this, I like to take a small screwdriver and then just kind of angle it up ever so slightly. I'm not prying off of the frame as like a fulcrum, because this is an aluminum frame and this is a steel tool. You can end up damaging these corners. So if you use this method, do so at your own risk. Also, as you're coming up and prying this loose, your little plunger assembly that's right in here is spring loaded, and this is going to want to shoot across the room. So as you are lifting up on this, I'm going to go ahead and block this just to try to, how's the best way to capture this? There we go. So you can see it launched all the way to here. Luckily my hand was in place. So you can remove your left side thumb safety and your little detent assembly. Flip over to the other side and remove your right side. Okay, now I'm going to take some pressure off of here. Now we're going to remove the magwell. And the magwell is done with a T10. That's my T10. And these will have some Loctite on them as well. These just screw out just like normal. This back little piece is going to come right off once you unscrew those. And then you're going to pull this assembly towards the muzzle end and it slides right off. Now, you got this little dangler thing located right here. Well, if you noticed when you're removing everything, there are little T-slots here on the magwell. Well, that little dangler is a T shape. And also you want to notice how it is oriented when you remove it. Basically, there is a small little angle that you want to have facing towards the back of the gun when you put this back together. So just a quick tip, if you're new to pulling stuff apart or if you think it's overly complicated, it's great to take pictures as you're going along so you can refer to it when you're trying to put it back together. Or you could just watch a YouTube video. Hey, that's what you're doing. Anyway, so we now need to take this out, which is a 1/16 And you'll notice that this is pretty loose. So it's kind of weird. It doesn't get screwed down all the way, which we'll talk about in the assembly video. All right, we're not here yet, but we are here. We got to take this little back strap off. Small screwdriver. You're going to want to gently lift up, and then it's keyed in right here on the grip, and it's also got a little tab underneath the beaver tail. So you're going to want to lift up and out, and you can see where the little keyed areas are located on this little back strap. Now we can go ahead and take our grip off of our frame, and we have 2 T25 screws, and we also have a pin that needs to be driven out. So let's go ahead and start with our pin. I'm going to go with the 3/32. It's actually a 1/8, but the 3/32 just gives me a little bit of clearance and a surety as I'm doing it. So that is now removed. Now let's go ahead and remove our grip screw here. And just like on a 2011, there is a little nut on the inside that you may want to stick your finger in and hold it. Now these do have Loctite on them when they come from the factory, so that might keep them in. And you'll also want to notice that these go in a certain way. There's a little beveled edge on them, and these will face down into the magwell when you go to reassemble them. Flip over and do the other side. Now we need to separate our grip module from the frame, and you will notice that when you flip around to the back of the grip module, you'll notice that your Sear spring has probably come off of the back of the Sear. That's because you got a lot of pressure from this hammer strut going into the mainspring housing. That's going to naturally want to separate. So if that is not how it goes back together, we'll have to overcome that when we do the assembly. To get this apart, initially, the first couple times of you doing this, the grip and the frame are going to be mated super, super tight. So you might have to focus on really separating them because of the really tight fit. Oh, there's a dog visiting me. What? Sorry about that. I had a pup come down and visit with me. All right, so we're going to set the grip module aside. We're going to focus back here onto the frame. Now this is going to come apart just like you normally would. You have your Sear pin and your hammer pin. So you're going to go ahead and take your punches. You're going to knock out your hammer. Knock out your Sear. So your disconnector and your Sear should just come right on out. So we're going to go ahead and set those aside. Now, one last thing to pull apart. That is going to be the right side slide stop release. Now, I learned the hard way on this that this little guy, which is just a smaller version of this guy that we use to take the, or that holds the extractor in, it is an 050 Allen, and it is Loctited in. So if you're going to remove this for some reason, you have to use heat. If not, you strip and break stuff. Okay, so but once you use heat, you'll feel it just break loose really nice and easy, and it doesn't take much for this to be able to come up and out. So unless you have to, probably don't even worry about it. All right, frame is done, other than unless you wanted to knock out this roll pin for your ejector, but I don't see any reason why to do that right now. Grip module. Now here's another fun thing, is that this mainspring housing and the leaf spring system is all held in with these little polymer tabs located on both sides of the mainspring housing. These can be broken. So if you're not paying attention, things can go sideways pretty quickly. To get this out, you have to push this up, and it gets partly onto this leaf spring, so you're fighting this. But you have to push this out overcome slight upward pressure on this before it clears and comes out. Now, something that kind of gets squirrely is the bottom of this mainspring housing. So this is a two-piece assembly, and you're going to have to lift up a little bit, and I used a small screwdriver to lift up to get it over the spring, or the leaf spring. This is actually an I shape, and it's down here as well. You have to lift up on this in order to get it to clear a little bit, or at least I have to every time. So what you want to do is you're going to push up, and then it is probably going to stop right about there. Before you move past this point, you're going to want to push down on this mainspring housing so that way it doesn't lift up and break these tabs as you're lifting up and pushing. Just like that. Kind of hard, you know, to see on camera, especially since my thumbs are in the way, but hopefully that gives you a big enough clue as what you need to do. So once you're able to do that, you kind of see how this leaf spring is kind of keyed in right here, and these are your little tabs that these little wings on your mainspring housings fit in. And as you can see, this just moves. So you have to get this guy, which protrudes down past the back of this mainspring housing, you got to get that up and over that leaf spring in order for it to finish sliding out. Yeah, I don't know why I'm doing the movement like you can understand it. Or not understand it, but gives it more visual effect. Okay, to get this Sear spring out, the leaf spring, what I do, small screwdriver, and I just gently pry up and under and kind of lift out. Okay, so the next thing we need to take apart is we need to get our trigger out, and in order to do that we have to remove our magazine release. And the magazine release is removed by a paper clip or a small little punch or hex or something. I found that the paper clip works good. Now there is a small little tab that catches on this side of the mag release that you have to press in and then pry to get this guy up. So you want to get this guy out before the rest of this will drop free. There's a small hole that you're going to insert, compress, and I always struggle with this. Did I get it? No. Instead, I'm just bending my... Oh, I did. I did. Okay. Yeah, that wasn't helpful. So everything dropped free. So as I compressed it and it released, you notice that you have this mag release assembly and this spring here. This will go in. This goes in like that. Okay, so your spring will face towards the front of the gun. We're just about at the removal of our trigger. There is a small little component located right in here, which again might be hard for you to see, but it is kind of keyed in to the grip module, and I found the best way to do it is just to easily squeeze the trigger to pop it out, and it'll slide right on out. That's this guy right here. Now this does have to get oriented correctly for when you put it back into the gun. The 90-degree corner will face forward, so just know that. Now you can remove your trigger and bow, and then you have a fully disassembled Oracle Arms 2311. So that's how you fully disassemble the Oracle Arms 2311. Now I'm going to be doing an assembly video right after this, and I hope to get it up very quickly, but in the meantime, I'm going to tell you a YouTube hint that not too many people know about, you know, because it's just kind of one of those hidden gems, you know, that people aren't told about. But what you want to do is when you get to the end of a video, and the key is like you got to look for the orientation of your play button, and what you'll do is you need to flip your phone around. Apparently I didn't lock the screen, so I'm sorry about that. So you got to go in and you got to lock your screen, so that way the play button will rotate and face the opposite way. So you can hit play and it'll play in reverse. So that way you can watch everything in reverse of how you got to put it back together. So hopefully that's helpful, guys. I appreciate you watching. You have a great day.